Good morning.
All right, I have 9 o'clock, so let's get started today. Find your seats. And the sooner we get started, the sooner we'll be done. Yay. So happy Friday, everybody. Happy Halloween a day early. I will be here on campus tomorrow, but I don't know if I'll see you tomorrow in the recital, so happy Halloween a day early. I have nothing to return to you, but we do have some homework for me today, and I did tell you in advance that I was going to collect this homework today. So before I do that, let me see if anyone has any questions about any of the pieces that you had it was in the textbook. I think it was page 167 and 169. And you all put this hopefully on a separate paper, they're right. Well, while you're thinking about that, let me go ahead and log in or connect to this system here so I'd like to play these pieces for you on YouTube so that you can hear what you analyzed. Oh, and by the way, I also called Implement Technology Services, and somebody supposedly came by yesterday afternoon and updated something called the drivers. So I'm hoping that we don't have any more garbled music in there. All right, let's listen to the Mozart example first.
For benefits into Pro Extra, the Home Depot loyalty program built for pros. Members save time, save money.
Or do you listen to something that's really heavy, like heavy metal or something like that?
It depends on how I wake up. If I wake up happy, then I'm just like, okay, we're good. But then if I wake up mad, I gotta get some good vibe music coming.
Oh, there we go, okay.
It just depends on how I wake up.
All right.
Yeah, sometimes if I'm already sad, I'm like, well, I'm gonna go to class, I might as well be more sad. And then that means I'm chill, because like sometimes I'll get really worked up. So those days I'll be like really laid back.
Sometimes I'm chill too because it's cold outside.
Yeah. Oh.
Anyway, so does anyone have any questions about the Mozart piece? Yes.
I was just really confused on like for those are like the organic line, because the second measures versus some like are the same, but then the first system isn't. So I got
All right, let me take a piece. So you're saying football overboard?
Yeah, honestly, me too.
Yeah, you got AV. Okay.
Doesn't help that, like, I already just listened.
I would agree with that. Yeah, it's, as you can see that it's related to it. It's just, there's some variation going on there. Good. Shall we go on to listen to the Chopin example on page 169? Maybe there'll be a commercial first, I don't know. Yeah, I want the graph that's going to have the slurs, the phrase labels, the measure numbers, cadences, and keys. And then in addition to that, all I want you to do is label the form using all the terms that we've discussed, that we've reviewed. Yes.
I just wanted to make sure that I use all the correct terms
Okay.
for this. I was
Do
just
you-
wondering if you could
Do
check.
you need me to come over there? Okay.
Because I haven't anything to read out the term.
Okay, so perfect, we don't need that term. That's only for cadence. Okay, so this is the Mozart piece.
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, what we're gonna need to, yeah, this looks good here. The Mozart piece is just a little more than a regular period. You see how there's 4 phrases here? Okay. So it's either gonna be a repeated period or it's gonna be, do you remember what we reviewed last class? With the 4, that has 4 phrases? You know?
Is it a double or repeat?
Yeah, it could be, it's either a repeated period or it's a double period. Okay, so double is a term that you may need to use.
Do I put the antecedent?
They asked me.
Or this one too?
Oh, no, it's not.
No, I don't think so. We don't technically have to show the antecedent points, but, yeah, I like how you kind of like that tonight.
Okay.
That's good.
Thank
Did you have a question? Oh, you got 2 pieces. Oh, okay. Okay, and then this is the Mozart?
Yes.
Oh, I see. Okay, but do you have it analyzed as, because you got the cadences, do you have it 4 phrases analyzed? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's probably what I was looking for.
Oh, you want like 4?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then again, 4 phrases is either gonna be a repeated period or a double period,
Okay.
okay? So you need to remember that 4 phrases, which is what all of these, both of these examples are, they're each 4 phrases long. They're either going to be some kind of double period or some kind of repeated period. Okay, those are the terms I'm gonna be looking for your labels, for your labels.
What's the difference between A and A prime? Like, can I have A in the same phrase in the prime?
Yes, you can have, yeah, you can have A and you can have A prime, you can have them really anywhere as long as the music, shows evidence of that, basically. Yeah, so the only difference between A and something called A and something called A prime, that they'll be similar, you'll be able to hear some similarities or see some similarities, but this won't be exactly the same. This will probably be some kind of variation or some kind of ornamentation of what came before. So that's what usually when we use the prime for A prime. Okay. All right, anything else before I come on? All right, then let me do that. Make sure your name is on your separate piece of paper and I'll pick it up. Wow, you're efficient, saving trees. All right, and so are you too. Oh, you got a house. All right. Let's see, you're right, it is. I'll come back.
Right.
You're gonna split yours? You? You got your name on both here?
Yes. On the
Is that
back.
committee?
On that,
What?
Is that?
Yeah, you got your name on yours? Yeah?
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
perfect.
Why you ask?
Some concern you understand all that.
It's everybody else's problem. You're not gonna see me.
Go there.
paragraph, there was one more.
That is so cute.
It's okay to use one whole sheet of paper, you know.
I know, I'm taking paper.
All right, so today what we're going to do is we're going to expand our knowledge of form. We're going to start looking at some actual entire movements or pieces that are in some forms. One of the form that we're going to talk about today is called binary form. Binary form, and I'll give you some lots of information on that, so hopefully you can understand. By the way, just so you know, we are breaking ground in your textbook into chapter 20. And I have an older edition with me, so I'm not sure exactly what page it starts on. But chapter 20 is entitled Larger Forms. So we're going to go beyond just periods and double periods and repeated periods and things like that. Believe it or not, any book on musical form will agree with some of our authors' definitions about form, and actually sometimes they'll disagree with some of the definitions that our author uses about form. So there's not really a lot of standardization when it comes to form, and that's why we get a lot of gray areas when it comes to analysis sometimes. But I'm going to use a slightly different approach than our author does in chapter 20 to talk about binary and ternary forms. Okay? So I will have you do some reading in the textbook, but I don't think I'll have you do everything, read everything in the chapter, because I do some things a little bit differently than the author does in this chapter. You need to know that periods and double periods can combine sometimes to form even larger units, and these larger units are called sections, parts. I'll say that these two terms mean the same thing. Okay? So periods and double periods combine to form even larger units, and these larger units you can refer to as sections or call them parts. Both terms mean the same thing for our purposes. Okay. Now, a musical piece that consists of two main sections is said to be in binary form. And that's not a very difficult definition. Okay. We just need to know that binary form contains two main sections or parts. By the way, if you look at, I don't know if you guys are into, I'm not really into this, but if you look at the prefix, do you ever study like the origin of words, kind of like where they come from, and then sometimes they have their meaning is just kind of right there in the word. Well, if you see the prefix bi here, that shows us the concept of two or two-ness, like a bicycle, right? Has two wheels. Or binary code. Now this is way outdated. I don't even know if they use that anymore, but binary code used to be just zeros and ones. Zeros and ones. It was just two different numbers. Okay? So that has the concept of two wrapped into it, that prefix bi. And so binary form will have a very broad or general definition is to say binary form has two main sections. Now, periods and double periods can be regarded as binary forms, because typically a period or a double period will have two main parts, right? A period will have an antecedent and a consequent phrase, or a double period will have two phrases that form the antecedent half and two phrases that form the consequent half. Okay? So you can say that periods and double periods are binary forms as well, but we don't really call periods and double periods binary forms because a label such as parallel complete period or parallel progressive double period, those labels are much more precise and informative. So we're not going to call periods and double periods binary forms. If you see a period or a double period as you've come to learn them and know them, continue to just label them as periods and double periods, because those terms are more precise. They're more specific, they're more informative than the general term binary form. Okay? So, I guess we could say then that binary forms are formal structures containing two main sections that cannot be called periods or double periods. So I'll say a binary form consists of two main sections, and it cannot be called a period or a double period. Because if it could, we would just call it a period or double period. So it's a musical piece or a musical section, so to speak, a formal structure that contains two main sections and cannot be called a period or a double period. All right. Now, let's take a look at an example. And let's say for this, I'm going to turn on the TV and see if I can show you some music that's in your book. And there's also a graph in the book too. Again, mine's an older edition, but I'm going to guess that your chapter 20 starts around page 329, somewhere in there. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Oh, wow, perfect. Okay, great. So if you have your book, I would turn to page 329. On the bottom of that page, you're going to have part of a very familiar Christmas song, just a melody. The Christmas song we know as What Child Is This?, sometimes called Greensleeves. This is an example of a binary form that we're going to use to just start out with. There are 4 phrases to this melody. There are 2 phrases shown at the bottom of one page, and then there are 2 phrases shown at the top of the next page. So I guess I'm going to have to reduce this and shrink it until everything fits. Let's see, can I take this and pull it? I'm going to do this, I'm going to pull the whole lens over. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'll freeze this here. I'll go to the piano, and I'm going to play the 4 phrases of Greensleeves, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can follow along on the screen, or you can follow along in your textbook. And just listen to the 4 phrases, and also pay attention to the cadences that the author has marked at the end of these 4 phrases. This is in the key of G minor. On the second page of this chapter, we are going to find out that these 4 phrases do not form a period, they do not form a double period. Okay? So if I graph these 4 phrases quickly, I'll have 1, 2, 3, 4. The labels for these phrases are going to be little a prime, then B, and B prime. Measure numbers at the beginnings of each of these measures are standard every 4 bars, 1, 5, 9, 13. And we have at this phrase a half cadence in G minor. Here we have a PAC in G minor. Here a half cadence in G minor. And finally a PAC in G minor again. Now let's see, am I forgetting anything else? Well, not yet. I'll add to this. Now, if we were to try to analyze or label these 4 phrases with the terms that we know now up to this point, we would have a problem. We would come up to an obstacle that we wouldn't necessarily know how to overcome. Okay? Because of the PACs at the ends of the 2nd and the 4th phrases, this tune cannot be called a double period, correct? Because a double period will require a weaker cadence here than the PAC at the end. So we can't call it a double period. But this tune cannot be called a repeated period either. Why can I not say that there's a period here which is repeated?
It's A and B.
Yeah, because the labels of the phrases don't match up, right? Because we have music that's labeled A in these 2 phrases, and B music labeled over here, so we can't say that these 2 phrases repeat, even in a modified or varied way, they don't really repeat the first 2 phrases. So if we can't call the 4 phrases a double period, and we can't call them a repeated period, well, what do? We actually call this, this whole setup here, we call it a binary form. We call it a binary form. And specifically, this type of binary form is referred to as a simple binary form. Okay, so I'm going to start, well, here's a new term right here. Simple. And the term simple will become clearer, I think, in later classes, but for now, just know that this is called a simple binary form because there's another type of binary form where music from the beginning returns at the end. And there's another name for that, it's called a rounded binary. And this is not that example. You see how we have no music from the beginning, no A music returning at the end? And because there's no original music from the beginning returning at the end, it's just called simple binary form. And I think that'll be enough that you need to know for now for what the term simple means. Again, when we get to rounded binary, you'll see the contrast, you'll see the difference, and perhaps simple will just be that much more clear at that point. Okay? So, simple binary form. The diagram on page, I guess it's page 330 of your book, it shows us that each of the 2 main sections of this simple binary form is a parallel complete period. So for instance, if I just look at this much right here, can I give these 2 phrases a label? See that weaker cadence, stronger cadence? I can say that these 2 phrases form a parallel complete period. I'll write that in here. And what about this last 2 phrases of this tune, Green Sleeve? Do they form a period? They do. And they also form a parallel complete period. So we have 2 parallel periods. We don't have a double period though. And this period is not a repeat of this period. So what we have to say is we have to say that all 4 phrases, this is our overall label of the form. Simple binary form. And I'm going to introduce a couple more labels. When we label an entire form, like a binary form, and later on in November we'll be talking about ternary form, we label the form parts, the 2 main parts of the binary form, we label them with a capital letter. A capital letter, maybe now you see why we use lowercase letters to label phrases. And I had to be insistent that you use lowercase letters to label phrases. Because you can see the 2 main parts here of the binary form I have in square brackets. So we're going to label the first part capital A, And do I label the second part capital A prime? No, because this is different. You see, the phrase labels are different. So I'm going to label the second part capital B. And I would say the form of this simple binary form, the specifics, is a capital A, capital B type of binary form. So we label the main sections of a binary form with capital letters, and because the two main sections in this Greensleeves tune are different, then we're going to label the piece capital A, capital B. I tend to, you don't have to, although I think it's clear and promotes more organized thinking. If I use curves, arcs, or slurs for phrases, I tend to show the sections or the parts, the two main sections or parts of a binary form. I tend to show them with these squarish brackets. I tend to use that rather than bigger arcs or bigger slurs or anything like that. Okay. Now, there are, I gotta give you two more terms. This, how do I say this? Just want to double check here. This A, capital B, that's really a description of what we call the thematic design of the form. And what I mean by thematic design is I mean the melody of the piece of music. Basically, all the musical elements of the form or of the piece besides the harmony. Okay? Thematic design typically includes the melody, all the elements of the piece, musical elements of the piece besides the harmonic content or the harmonic organization and structure. Okay? Because I'm going to give you, excuse me, two terms that describe the harmonic structure of a binary form. All right. Now, I'll probably have to repeat this because it's a little bit involved, but there are two terms that describe the harmonic structure of a binary form, and those two terms are these. I'm sorry that they start with the same letters as some of the other terms that we've already got. Sectional versus continuous. Okay. And let me tell you how you know how to label a binary form as either sectional or continuous. When the first main part of a binary form, or you could say when the capital A section ends with a tonic chord in the original or home key of the piece, we say that the overall binary form is sectional. Let me say that again. When the first part, main part, or the capital A section of a binary form, when it ends on a tonic chord in the original key of the starting key of the movement, we say that the harmonic structure of the entire form is sectional. And by the way, if we have a PAC, or since we have a PAC in G, does the first large A section in this form, does it end with a tonic chord or tonic harmony in the home key? Yeah, it does, because a PAC is going to end on 1, and we're in the key of G, which is the opening or the starting key of the piece. So I can actually add one more term to my description of this binary form, and it's not only a simple binary, but I will say that it is a simple sectional binary form. Simple refers to the thematic design, capital A, capital B. Sectional refers to the harmonic structure or harmonic organization. And just to give you a little bit of information, when the first section of a binary form ends on a 1 chord in the home key, and I'm going to put that right here, there's my minor 1 chord. We call the form sectional because a tonic chord in the home key, we say closes or completes the first section harmonically. Whenever you start in a particular key, you usually start on one harmony. You move away from one harmony, you get all these other chords. But when you finally come back to one, what that does is it kind of like closes what we call a musical or tonal circuit. If any of you like electricity or electricians, it closes this section. It starts at the tonic key on a tonic chord. It moves around, still in the same key, but to different harmonies, and it finally comes back. And because ending the first section of a binary form closes or completes the first section harmonically, what it does is it enables the first part of this form, just this A, capital A part, it allows it to stand on its own. Right? When you hear a tonic chord, a part of a PAC ending a phrase or a piece, it almost like closes that, and you don't necessarily need any more music to continue, right? You've reached at least a certain level or degree of satisfaction where you don't need any more music to follow. Okay. And so that's why we call this sectional, because harmonically, this is a section, and harmonically, this is a separate section. If I did not have a tonic chord in the home key of the piece here at the end of the first A section, then the harmony is you're understood to kind of just flow tonally all the way through until you do get to the tonic chord in the home key of the piece, which wouldn't be till the very end. Okay. So when the first section of a binary form ends on something other than a tonic chord in the original key, then we would say that the entire form, the harmonic structure of the form is continuous. Continuous. Okay. Ending on a chord other than tonic right here causes the first section of the piece to sound harmonically open. That is, we expect more music to continue until we get to a PAC in the original key of the movement, throughout the passage, throughout the piece. Okay. So, I know this is, I don't think this is going too far. A simple binary form that's sectional, you could think of as A period, B period. Harmonically, we got a closed section right here, that's why the period is there. And then the second section is also harmonically self-contained or closed. But a continuous simple binary is you could think of it being graphed as this, A, B period. There's no break harmonically in the middle. It just tonally flows from the beginning all the way to the very end until you get to the final tonic chord in the home key. Okay. So what would be some examples of a type of cadence or a chord that would end the capital A section that would make this form harmonically continuous? Okay, a deceptive cadence, yep, that's right, would make it harmonically continuous. A half cadence. What about though if the first two phrases, what if they modulate to another key and we get to a tonic chord, but it's in another key, like for instance, instead of G minor, let's say we get to a one chord in B flat major. Is that considered sectional or continuous then?
Continuous.
It's still continuous. Because it has to be a tonic chord in the home key, in the original key, to make it sectional, a hard break here harmonically. Okay. So anything else besides a tonic chord in the home key at the end of the A, capital A section, is going to make the entire form continuous rather than sectional. Okay. I don't want to, what's the term? Kick a dead horse, beat a dead. I don't want to, beat this to death. I just want to try to make it pretty clear in your mind. Okay. So the overall form of green sleeves, or what child is this, whatever you want to call it, I would say is simple sectional binary. Simple sectional binary. Okay. Now, I've got one other piece that I would like to take a look at for practice analyzing and graphing. And I have a handout for you so that you can actually look at it at your desk rather than craning or straining your neck to look up there, even though I probably will put a copy up on the board there. So let's take a look at this piece in the last 15 minutes that we have of class. This comes from another book, but I think it's a pretty clear example.
Thank you.
No, you gotta look at the final chord of the capital A section.
Oh, the first part.
It is not tonic in the original key,
Okay.
it's continuous. All right. If any of you are, have ever taken piano lessons or been piano players, you may have heard this piece, you may have played this piece before. It's kind of, it's a little bit common, I guess, in the early piano repertoire. I don't want to say it's beginning level, it's not, certainly not beginning level, it's past that. But it's not advanced level, super advanced level either. Okay, so, gosh, I don't know, what would you, yeah, I think it might be just easiest if I try to print it out on the piano because I've got this showing here, rather than having to switch the inputs and all that stuff. I won't do the repeats or anything like that, just to give you an idea of how it sounds. By the way, the home key or the original key of this piece is D minor. D minor, okay? Well, I don't need to do the repeats. Okay, let's go on to the next part. And I won't do the repeat here either. Okay, so that gives you just a little idea of how it sounds. Now, let's say our task is to graph this bad boy and give it some kind of a label. I don't think we've looked at things that are quite this big before in terms of form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase this so I can make room to graph it on the board. And you see if you can help me graph it and understand and follow why I'm graphing it the way I am graphing it. Okay, so how many phrases would you say are in this? 4 phrases, yeah, I would agree. And each phrase is approximately about 4 measures long. Okay? So let me start by getting my phrases in my graph. There's 4 of them right here. And let me do measure numbers at the beginning of each of these right away. I'll do measure 1 here. Measure 5 starts the second phrase. Measure 9 is the downbeat of that phrase, and measure 13 is the downbeat of that phrase. Now I know it kind of, if you're really observant, a lot of the answers to the form are on this page, comes from another theory text. But let's just pretend, kind of pretend you don't have a lot of these answers written there. You know you're going to always label the first phrase of your form lowercase a. Just looking at the music, the first phrase, dum, ya, da, 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 dum, dum, dum. The second phrase, dum, da, 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 da. What should I label the second phrase? Little d. And the third phrase, dum, 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 dum. What would you call that one? C. C. And then finally the last phrase, da, 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 da.
D.
D, yeah. Have you ever graphed anything that's just all different?
I thought there was one, homework like last semester. When we
It
were
could have been.
in quarantine, I think there was one I had all 4 because I was really confused.
Okay.
So I asked like 4 people, I'm like, hey, do you know what to do?
And all the 4 people said,
They said no.
punt.
So they're like, just have fun.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, we don't see too many of these. But just because the phrases are labeled all something different doesn't mean we don't have some kind of a form here. Okay? We're going to find out we do have some kind of a form here. All right, let's put in some cadences. The author has put in some cadences here. I do need to make a little point about measure 4. If you analyze the cadence, the first cadence, the one in measure 4, if you analyze it on the downbeat of measure 4, you would come up with an IAC rather than a PAC, because the melody note there is may rather than do. If you wait till the very end of the measure, and you analyze the cadence on the third beat, then you would get a PAC because you do have do in the melody, and that's what the author has done. I don't know if I necessarily like what the author has done here, but do you see how you could analyze the first cadence as an IAC? An IAC? I don't even know if it matters. I'm just gonna, you know what I'll do? I'll just do this. I'll do either an IAC or a PAC, but we know we're in D minor. That's how I'm going to label the first cadence. Okay. All right, the second cadence is told to us it's a PAC, but what key is the second cadence in? It says it's a cadence in the capital 3 key. What's the 3 key of D minor? F major, yeah, it's the relative major key, right? D, E, F. Okay. So this is a PAC in F major. The third phrase, by the time you get to the half cadence in measure 12, do you see all those C sharps? That clues us in that we're back in D minor. So the cadence here is going to be a half cadence in D minor, and the final cadence will be a PAC in D minor. Now we got a lot of our information. Do you also see one thing that helps us see that there are two main sections? Although I wouldn't rely on this 100% of the time, but the fact that this piece divides into two main sections or parts, do you see the repeat signs? There's a repeat sign in measure 8, halfway through, and then there's a repeat sign in measure 16 at the end. So we can actually think of this, these 4 phrases as constituting two main sections or parts. Okay, now comes the new stuff. Capital letter labels, right? You know, the first half or the first main section or part is always going to be labeled capital A. Based on these small or lowercase labels here, what capital letter would you put here? Are these two phrases anything like the first two phrases? No, so you have to put what here? B, yeah. Don't put capital C or D because you haven't used your capital B yet at this level. Okay? So AB. What type of binary form is this thematically? The thematic design, I've only taught you one so far. Simple, thank you. So this is a simple binary form. But there's one other term that we have to include to label this form correctly. And that's the harmonic structure. Okay, yeah. Whoa, you guys are way ahead of me. Okay. Is there a tonic chord at the end of this capital A section in the home key?
No.
No. In fact, there's an F major chord. It's a tonic chord in a key other than the home key. So we have to say that the harmonic structure of this binary form is continuous. And it doesn't come to a final close until we get to the final tonic chord in D minor, the original key, way at the end. So my analysis of this is going to be simple, continuous binary form. Yeah. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, when you do the homework, you're going to be looking at a passage that's in binary form. I don't want you to, when you have the phrases there, I don't want you to see 4 phrases and say that, oh, these don't relate at all. What do I do next? I don't know what to do. Well, can you group the 4 phrases into one section of 2 phrases and another big section of 2 so that you can give them capital letter labels for the overall form of the piece? Now, what if I were to ask you a few other questions about the form? For instance, let's say, for the sake of argument, let's agree that the cadence at the end of the first phrase is indeed an IAC. What smaller form do just the two phrases then, first two phrases form?
Oh, parallel, contrasting.
Contrasting?
Progressive.
Progressive, hey, there you go. Progressive period. Now you know why we did the review of this stuff in the past few classes. Because I may ask you things like this on quizzes or tests or homework. What is the form of just the first two phrases? You would say, oh, thanks for asking, Dr. H. I can tell you, it's a contrasting progressive period. And if I asked you, what is the form of the last two phrases of this binary form, you would say, contrasting complete period. That's right. So you put that in your... See, there's a lot of terms. I know that you got to remember, but I think the more you use them, the more experience you'll get, the easier it'll be to recall these terms, and it won't be so difficult. Now, the last thing I want to say is, in a binary form like this, the two main sections, is it required that one or both or all of the two main sections are smaller forms like periods? No, it's not required. You don't have, the first two phrases don't necessarily have to form a period, neither do the last two phrases. But it just so happens that these do. So, kudos to whoever wrote this. By the way, it says this is a minuet by Anonymous. Okay, so, well, we don't know exactly who wrote this, but whoever did, especially if they were thinking an IAC here, they were not only thinking a simple continuous binary form, but they were also embedding in there these smaller things like these periods as well. So, now that we've taken this, we've started scratching the surface on these bigger forms, do you see how music is not just some random haphazard splotch of notes that don't relate to each other? You know, there's a lot of thought, there's a lot of craft, there's a lot of art that's put in and designed into music so that the listener can follow it and make some sort of sense of it. You just gotta look for it, right? You just gotta look for it, it's there. Okay, any questions before we go? Then your homework for next time is workbook page 190 and 191. There's a small block piece by block that I need you to graph on a separate piece of paper, and then also answer. There's a few questions in your workbook about that. So we'll stop here. That's right about you will only learn sonata. That's one of the big forms of all music. You'll only learn that if you take content form analysis. It's called Music 302. It's only offered in the fall.
We're gonna go hard.
The fall. I mean, but again, it depends on your particular, like, I don't think music education, they don't have to take it. But like music performance majors, which I think you are, they have to take form analysis. But you can always take it as
It's fun. It almost get cured in them.
Dude, you just like.
Right there.
well, there you go.
What are we doing?
So yeah, that's what you said. I like it.
I love this.
It's, well, yeah, it's really, you can look at some really good stuff.
He looks good.
It does look good. For a second, when I just saw the wig, I'm like, are you dressed in a